have a mansion. In the post-apocalyptic world by Morning Star LL. Chapter 151, The End of the Journey. The next morning, Jiang Chen sat up on the bed while rubbing his still sleepy eyes. A faint smile appeared on his face while looking at Aisha, who was still curled up in blankets, sleeping like an adorable cat. Needless to say, there were no words for what happened last night. Maybe it was just his imagination, however, it seemed that from that night on, Aisha had started becoming clingier. Although she remained expressionless in public when it was just the two of them, there's no need to say the rest. Yesterday he took Aisha around all the major tourist attractions, along with hundreds of photos carrying their beautiful memories. It could be considered as the perfect culmination of their cane trip. He leaned against the headboard, brooding for a short while, and then taking care not to disturb the still sleeping Aisha, he sneaked out of bed. He went to the bathroom, took a shower, and then took out his phone to call Robert. Buddy, I heard you've solved your problem. Sorry, As soon as the phone connected, Robert's apologetic voice immediately came through. Okay, I didn't come here to listen to you apologize. Jiang Chen yawned and wandered to the balcony of the room. Niger, last stop, how are things over there? Don't worry, everything will be smooth sailing from here on. I already personally made the trip to ensure everything is ready. Robert touched his nose with embarrassment and his laugh echoed through the phone. You personally made the trip? When did you become so diligent? Jiang Chen asked, looking baffled. Your old friend is not monitoring you? Jiang Chen smiled and leaned leisurely against the carved metal fence. Has the infrastructure construction been completed yet? I've already solved the training problem. Of course, I know a Portuguese builder who's an expert in this area. He previously assisted the French army to build a military outpost in Mali. In short, this guy was good at building military infrastructures. Asking price is not expensive, $15 million. I went and inspected it yesterday. It's already finished and the quality was also excellent. Not bad. Jiang Chen nodded with satisfaction and changed the topic. What about the refugees? Done. Great. Wait for me in Niger. Jiang Chen then hung up the phone. All of a sudden, he felt a piece of clothing gently draping over his back. Upon turning around, he was greeted by Aisha's tender but fiery eyes. You're up. Jiang Chen smiled and gently held the small hand on his shoulder. It's a bit cold here, especially in the morning. Are you hungry? I'll make you breakfast, Aisha said softly. Jiang Chen's eyes bore into Aisha's eyes. Being stared like that by Jiang Chen, Aisha's cheeks turned scarlet and whispered, What? Nothing, I've just realized you're becoming more and more beautiful. Jiang Chen grinned wickedly while staring into her eyes. Gently clutching her panicking hands, he pulled Aisha back into the house. Come on, we're getting that breakfast. Breakfast at Premier Hotel was exquisite though somewhat bit expensive. After eating breakfast, Jiang Chen checked out at the front desk, and then while holding Aisha's hand, boarded the taxi and headed to Borispor International Airport. What luggage? Just store them directly in the storage dimension. After getting off the vehicle, Aisha returned to her usual cold expression and followed Jiang Chen half a step behind. At the airport gate, Jiang Chen met Nick along with 10 cane men who were hauling their suitcases. He greeted Nick and turned to look at the 10 soldiers of the former 92nd Mechanized Infantry. It's such a great honor. You've made the right choice, Jiang Chen smiled and extended his arms in a welcoming gesture. Not like we have much of choice, the man named Ivan shrugged. His stiff face contorted slightly before continuing, but the opportunities you provided are sure very attractive. Laughing, Jiang Chen's expression was very cordial. Of course, I've always been very good with my people. At least the old guy Anderson doesn't need to worry about housing anymore, said a huge bald man with a smile as he pounded the back of his comrade standing next to him. House. That's right. Ivan rolled his eyes and shrugged. I served the army for 25 years when the former Soviet Union still existed. Unfortunately, I have been enlisted in the Kenyan army. I was on the list for housing in 1987, but with how things are looking, it would take 100 more years before it would be my turn. That's nothing, said the bald guy, patting the guy who continued to remain quiet. It's even more unfortunate for Anderson. It was already his turn when his name was replaced by someone else. Don't keep using me as an example. Whoever wants to fight for those swindlers can go right ahead. This country has nothing to do with me anymore, Anderson softly rebuked with an unhappy expression. Okay, guys, why don't we chat in the waiting area? A group of people standing in front of the airport looked out of place however you look at it. Jiang Chen noticed that the police in the front door was deliberately looking in their direction. It was a critical period after all, so any group of people gathering around would cause suspicion. There was still an hour before the plane took off and Jiang Chen was fooling around with Nick in the waiting area. Aisha was sitting impassively beside Jiang Chen and was holding a fashion magazine provided by the airport. It seemed like, after the shopping spree, some kind of strange interest was awakened in her. Where have you been to these past few days? Went back home and then traveled for a bit, Nick responded succinctly and grinned. Speaking of which, you didn't bring your family to Los Santos? Jiang Chen asked, somewhat surprised. They can't. Nick's face revealed a rare melancholic expression. Jiang Chen didn't know what to say. He seemed to have realized something as a wry smile appeared on his face. Looking at the flight information over his head, he appeared nostalgic and said, do you remember the wooden cabin in Osk? That's my home. Sorry for making you remember something bad, Jiang Chen said softly. It's okay, it's all in the past. Previously, Jiang Chen only heard Robert mentioning about Nick's hometown being in Kane. However, he didn't think that it would be in Osk and his house would be that cabin. Due of the heavy atmosphere, the conversation was halted. After looking at the time, Jiang Chen got up and walked towards the restroom. Before boarding the plane, he decided to take it easy first. But just as he was about to leave the restroom, he unexpectedly ran into someone, who he's expecting to be there. The same gray vest, aquiline nose, Willie agent he met the day before yesterday in the ice cream shop. You finally came looking for me. Speaking of which, I still don't know your name. Jiang Chen extended his hand with a smile. My job means that it's inconvenient for me to reveal my name, but you may call me Merlin. Merlin shook his hand, but his eyes were locked on Jiang Chen. Merlin? Magician? Your overtime is over? That's right. Thanks to you. Although he said thank you, there was not a trace of gratitude on his face. Where is the sniper? Merlin cut straight to the point. In a house in Osk. I heard the endurance of snipers is not bad, so before I left I feed him well. Should be enough to sustain him for 3 days without a problem. Jiang Chen smiled. The expression on Merlin's face had not changed and his hawk-like glare was still piercing. His exact location. According to the agreement, you said you'll give us his coordinate before leaving the country. It's on this USB. Jiang Chen casually took out a thumb-sized USB and handed it to Merlin. Merlin silently reached out to hold the USB only to find out that Jiang Chen wasn't letting go. He cast a suspicious look at Jiang Chen. I haven't boarded yet, Jiang Chen stated with a smile. We'll keep our end of the bargain. Merlin's exerted a bit more strength. But I don't trust that. Jiang Chen's grip on the USB remained firm. Why? Merlin's facial muscle was all wound up due to the pressure. There is still half an hour before we board the plane. To ensure that I'll safely get on the plane and land safely at my destination, I just want to remind you one thing before giving this to you. Jiang Chen paused, smiled when he saw the tension on Merlin's face, before continuing, I have encrypted the contents inside this USB. After inserting it in the computer for 1.5 hours, it would automatically unlock the encrypted information inside. If anything happens to me during this trip, I'm sorry, but KGB might get their hands on the sniper's coordinate location first. 1 hour was enough for the plane to land in Nigeria. After saying his piece, Jiang Chen let his hand loose without warning. Merlin clutched the USB awkwardly and bumped into the washroom door, stumbling a few steps backward. Staring intently at Jiang Chen, Merlin suddenly burst out laughing. I didn't expect you to be a programmer. His original plan was to wait until they acquire the sniper's location and then immediately arrest Jiang Chen. There are far too many reasons for Willie's society to do this. As for the organization behind Jiang Chen, ridiculous, why would they be afraid? Jiang Chen shrugged, no, but I am the boss, I have a lot of competent employees. Naturally, the codes in the USB were Yao Yao's masterpiece. Good, I hope you never set foot in Kane again. Merlin took the USB, left words dripping with threats and walked away. I hope you'll be able to receive your salary sooner before your boss goes bankrupt, he shouted at his leaving figure before returning to the boarding area with a smile. He sat next to Aisha, who was still holding the same fashion magazine. Those people left. Aisha lowered her voice. The secret agents who had been sitting nearby had already left, and the waiting room seemed deserted for a moment. Yes, I had a talk with their boss. Which dress do you like? Jiang Chen skillfully changed the topic. Aisha blushed as her fingers rubbed against the page. This one, no, I already have enough clothes. This one should fit you nicely. Alright, let's buy it. Copy the website, and I'll show you how to shop online. Nick glanced at the two people and cracked a smile on their display of affection. He then looked at the clock on the wall again. It was almost time to board. Farewell, my hometown. I wish you peace. Chapter 152, The Last Stop. Niger, Niamey International Airport. Buddy, haha, we meet again. Robert passionately greeted and embraced Jiang Chen. Jiang Chen awkwardly shoved him away. Ahem, I think it's better if we just shake hands. No, this is to sincerely express my remorse. He pounded Jiang Chen's back quite vigorously. Then he walked in front of a Hummer and exaggeratedly opened the door with a teasing smile. "Please get in the car, Your Honorable Dictatorship." "I still have a long way to go," Jiang Chen retorted with a smile. He took Aisha to sit at the back of the car, while Nick naturally took the passenger seat in front. "Now that you think about it, I do believe fate has brought us together in the desert." Robert stepped on the gas, held the steering wheel and started the ignition. He remarked while smiling, "Last time, it was in the desert in Iraq too. Last time, I was there to wipe your ass for you. Hopefully, you won't get into trouble this time." Jiang Chen couldn't resist the temptation to mock him. "Ahem, aren't you missing the point here? There's a guy from UA who runs an errand all over the world for you, a Slavic who went to the front line with you, and a beauty sitting beside you." Robert jested and looked at him through the rearview mirror of the car. Hearing this, although there was no visible change in Aisha's expression, her face turned into a crimson shade. "Just focus on your driving. Stop talking nonsense anymore," Jiang Chen laughingly reprimanded him and then paused before asking, "Where's the location of the base?" "Sahara Desert, Niger. It's an undeveloped area in Agadez region. Better prepare yourself mentally as it could be quite desolated out there," Robert reminded. The outside of the airport was in Luss Hill, and there were hardly any buildings in sight. Aside from the road, there were dust and yellow sands everywhere. A gust of wind would occasionally sweep a layer of dust. Moreover, it was probably the only airport Jiang Chen had seen without a taxi lane, a bus stop, let alone a subway. Damn, how could this place be so poor, he swore while he stared out of the window into the endless sand dunes that went as far as the eyes could see. How can you say that this is the capital? At the very least, it shouldn't be this undeveloped. Downtown is much better. It's like the suburbs of Los Santos. Robert laughed. 10 kilometers more to go. We're not that far. Speaking of poverty, Niger's Minister of Commerce Armani would like to meet you and invite you to dinner. To attract foreign investment? Jiang Chen asked dispassionately. He leaned back on the chair and yawned. Why don't you go on my behalf? I already bought 20 acres of wasteland. I'm temporarily not interested in investing in any other projects. Ahem, no, there's actually more to it. Basic necessities such as water, power supply, food, ammunition that will be used in training, and so on, Robert reminded him. Those indeed posed as a concern. Jiang Chen pondered on it while pinching his chin. Military supplies, that I can solve. As for the others, what do you suggest? Jiang Chen looked at Robert. For the power supply, my advice is to buy a few sets of fuel generators or a batch of solar cells. The sun is pretty intense here, so I think solar power would be our best choice. As for the water, it seems to be illegal to drill well in here. And I also don't suggest engaging in squabbles with the local tribes. I heard that even the Niger government couldn't control them, so it's best if we outsource them. Food and basic necessities can be purchased locally. The cost of living here can be quite cheap, especially the food. Then let's do that, Jiang Chen nodded. If that's the case, you definitely need to meet Armani. But before that, I'll send you to the hotel where you'll be staying. Robert shrugged and smiled. The car finally drove into the downtown area. Niger River ran through the city. The river was lush verdant, just like an oasis in the desert. In fact, it was not as bad as what Robert made it out to be. At the very least, Niamey, the capital of the country, didn't seem that bad. Although he hadn't seen the suburbs of Los Santos, when they reached the downtown area, the surrounding buildings looked rather sophisticated. He only stayed at the hotel for a short while before he changed into a suit Robert had prepared for him and got into the car. This time, instead of Robert's Hummer, it was Niger Department of Commerce for receiving VIP guests. They got off at a restaurant where they apparently received foreign guests. A black man in a suit walked toward him and greeted him with a smile. Welcome, Mr. Jiang Chen. You must be the Oriental billionaire Robert was talking about. The elderly black minister warmly held Jiang Chen's right hand and shook it firmly. Much to Jiang Chen's surprise, Armani could actually speak in Han. Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Armani, he responded to his enthusiastic greetings. I knew a lot of Han comrades as outstanding as you. We have a lot of comrades here in Niger coming from Hua, so you can think of this place as your second home. Niger welcomes you, Armani said warmly, speaking in a rather fluent Han. Haha, of course. Pleasantries completed, Jiang Chen and Armani walked into the restaurant with an entourage of bodyguards and other personnel in tow. This welcome ceremony was quite lavish. Seeing this, a sudden strange idea popped up into Jiang Chen's mind. He was wondering when he returns home for New Year, would his major bring a congregation of people to welcome him in a grand fashion such as this? He was, after all, the man who appeared in the Wall Street Journal. The government newspaper also lauded him for his achievement in the technology sector. Even in the entire province, not a lot of people could outshine him. Sheesh, it would be so cool to go home and be welcomed in such a grand fashion. Despite being in overseas, distance did not interfere with his wish-fulfillment fantasies. Armani invited him to sit with him. The side-by-side seating arrangement spoke volumes about how highly the Minister of Commerce regarded him. Naturally, looking from this angle, one could also see how poor Niger was. Perhaps because of the presence of numerous Han investors in Niger, Armani chose to discuss business during dinner. He clearly knew the intricacies of their culture as he perfunctorily drank 2 glasses before deciding to stop. Obviously, he was drinking while talking business according to Han custom. After another exchange of greetings, Armani naturally led the topic into the right track. Thank you very much, Mr. Jiang, for investing in Niger. Is there anything we can assist you with to make this process easier? The basic economic condition is excellent and we're now in the stage of rapid development. There are a lot of business opportunities to invest in. Listening to Armani's passionate speech or drivel, Jiang Chen couldn't help but ridicule him in his mind. You don't even have cab at your airport, yet you have the audacity to say that your economic situation is good. But even if the heart said so, the words could not be said out loud. Of course, I am very optimistic about the domestic development of your country. And that's exactly the reason why I'm establishing a security company and building a training facility here. Listening to this black uncle speaking for a long time, Jiang Chen still maintained his composure. The meaning behind these words was, I have no interest in investing now. However, Armani was apparently not ready to give up that easily as he continued to enthusiastically discuss some other projects in great details. His meaning was obvious, give me some money right now. How about this, I have a proposal, to facilitate seamless transportation of goods, I intend to invest in road construction from the provincial capital of Agadez province to the undeveloped area. In fact, this idea was brewing in his mind for a while now, and it was an excellent opportunity to bring it up. As soon as Armani heard about the road construction, his eyes instantly brightened. If they could build roads, not only it would drastically improve the livelihood of people in the undeveloped areas, it would also strengthen the government's control over the rebellious tribes. Haha, Niger citizens will surely be very grateful for your generosity and friendship, Mr. Jiang. Don't mention it. It is up to you to study the specific planning of the road, and then we will discuss it further based on your proposal, Jiang Chen responded with a smile while looking at the eagle-eyed Armani. Finally the dinner concluded in a harmonious mood. The Minister of Commerce personally sent him back to the hotel where he was staying. How is it, my friend? Robert asked while grinning at him. He was standing at the entrance of the hotel. Annoying. Do ministers always talk this much? They're so damn desperate for an investment. That Armani was a rather interesting character, a politician with a flair for public speaking. There was nothing wrong with soliciting investment, but when Armani sensed his lack of interest, he became more assertive and went on forever. For a while there, although he knew that Armani was speaking Han, he had no idea what he was talking about. Ha ha ha. Robert started to laugh hysterically and patted him on the shoulder. My friend, now you understand my pain? The first day I was here, he basically serenades to me for the entire day. But I cleverly brought your name up and said that I was only working for you, and the real person with money is a guy named Jiang Chen. That's not funny. Jiang Chen glared at him and entered the hotel. Robert caught up to him and started getting down to a more serious topic. Simply put, it could be quite annoying to talk business with black people, but we can't just give them some candies and send them away. Tomorrow we'll head over to Agadez province to inspect your military base. Ahem, it's a training facility for a security company. It doesn't matter since everyone already knows, Robert commented carelessly. Stopping in front of the elevator, Robert nudged him with his elbow and quipped, we'll depart early morning tomorrow so don't go crazy tonight. Without waiting for his reaction, Robert dashed into the elevator that's about to close. This pervert, Jiang Chen said with amusement and shook his head. But at that moment, an image of Aisha dressed in a white floral dress last night appeared in his mind. Okay, Jiang Chen decided. I'll sleep a bit later tonight and accompany her to try on a few clothes. Chapter 153, The Tuareg Tribe. In the morning, the tranquil Sahara Desert welcomed a group of strange guests. 3 Hummers galloped the vast endless expanse of sand, leaving 3 trails of dust behind the undisturbed desert. How much longer? Jiang Chen asked in boredom while sitting in the back with his arms crossed. Aisha, who was sitting beside him, had the same emotionless expression, but from the dark, deep circles under her eyes, it was evident she didn't get enough sleep. It's just right ahead of us. But first, we need to greet the chiefs of the nearby tribes, Robert yelled enthusiastically while driving. Why do I feel that you get really excited when you're in the desert? Jiang Chen glanced at him. This feeling of freedom is something that you'll never understand. This guy is crazy. Jiang Chen mulled things over while looking outside the window. The other 2 Hummers sat 10 veterans recruited as instructors, compared to the energy here, theirs was much quieter. Soon the vehicle drove into small sand dunes with a harder surface. When Jiang Chen's vision suddenly cleared, he saw rows and rows of small huts. Primitive, ignorance, poverty. These three words summed up his first impression. Yellowish-gray house and courtyard piled up from gravel. Withered branches were tied together and used as the gate of the courtyard, and the windows were covered with dyed cloths like an ancient Arabic town in the 12th century. Every household kept a camel. It was said that here a man's social status was measured by how many camels he possessed. I'm a bit confused. Perhaps you can explain to me our purpose of coming here? Jiang Chen asked helplessly. Of course. It might be a tad difficult to understand based from the modern perspective. After all, we already paid the money and purchased the land from the government of Niger. A portion of that money was also used to compensate them for taking up their ranch. As far as the contract is concerned, the 20 hectares of land not far from here are ours, but according to the local customs, our identity is still that of a guest. So following their tradition, we must obtain their recognition first before we can settle here, Robert explained. That troublesome? Jiang Chen's mouth twitched. In fact, it's only a formality since they are more or less secularized. Robert shrugged and slowed down the speed of the car. Still, there are some benefits from respecting their local tradition. At the very least, we can harmoniously coexist without worrying about them giving us trouble, and they may even stand by our side during critical moments. I don't quite understand what you're saying. So who is the owner of this piece of land? Is it Niger? The Tuareg tribe? You can think of it as Niger as the king of the Middle Age, and Tuareg tribe as the lord of this piece of land. Roberts rolled his eyes as he gave an unlikely metaphor. If we get into a conflict with them, which side would the Niger government be on? Jiang Chen asked a dangerous question after listening to Robert's explanation. A troubled smile appeared on Robert's face upon hearing Jiang Chen's question. The Niger government will be delighted if we could wipe them out, but that's kind of impossible. Tuareg men are scattered throughout the desert. And rumor says that they have some unusual relationship with extremist organizations like Al-Qaeda. The Tuareg guerrillas also fought alongside Al-Qaeda during a riot in Mali. Robert paused when he noticed Jiang Chen's unresponsiveness. For fear that Jiang Chen might do something harsh, he immediately added, I suggest we better not clash with them. The people here are quite tough, and despite being poor, every household has an AK lying around. Don't be nervous, I was just asking, Jiang Chen quipped. When the car drove into the tribe, all natives cast the vehicles with a curious look. Due to the poor road condition, Robert rolled down the window and signaled the two vehicles behind to stay outside of the tribe. It was not a big deal, following the local tradition shouldn't take long to complete. That's the food market over there, but I don't recommend you trying out the things they sell there. What a coincidence, I'm also not interested. Jiang Chen looked outside the window. A kid on a camel gave him a curious look, and his father, who was wearing a veil, led the camel out of the tribe. Aisha subtly glanced at the window and muttered one phrase, heresy. The car stopped, following the direction of a black woman. Jiang Chen and Robert walked into the building of the central tribe. Tuareg tribe, a nomadic ethnic confederation mainly distributed in the suburbs of the Sahara Desert in Africa, and a branch of the Berber clan spread throughout the vast region of North Africa. Renowned for their writing, language, and unique nomadic life, which were substantially different from those of their surrounding neighbors. Instead of a matriarchal social organization, Tuareg was a matrilineal society. Although they believe in Islam, women were not required to wear a veil. On the contrary, men 25 and above must wear a veil in the Tuareg clan society. What was more striking was its open marital values wherein women could have multiple marriage partners, and in case of divorce, all assets would belong to them. Apart from these strange customs, they were naturally born warriors. There was a notable local motto, the desert holds no secret to Tuareg people. In this desert, they knew how to fight better than anyone else. During the Mali Civil War, Tuareg guerrillas delivered consecutive losses to the government forces. Moreover, because of its strong combat ability, there were a lot of Mediterranean dictators and warlords who were interested in their fighting prowess. The most famous one was Gaddafi, who particularly favored Tuareg mercenaries. After the outbreak of the civil war in Libya, Gaddafi even offered the Tuareg tribe a lucrative remuneration of $1,000 a day to help him quell an anti-government militant. Of course, no one knew if the money had actually been honored or true in the first place. Robert had, in fact, recommended to Jiang Chen that since they chose Niger as the location for the base, recruiting Tuareg people might not be such a bad idea. However, after some consideration, Jiang Chen still rejected his proposal. The main reason was Jiang Chen's lack of trust in their culture and religion, and also to avoid potential issues that could arise in the future. At least those refugees who fled their hometown would not suddenly clamor to go home. In any case, the refugees were more reliable. In the relatively spacious house, Jiang Chen saw the legendary tribal chief. Distant visitors, may your wealth be endless like the sands of the Sahara. The dark-skinned female chief nodded slightly, her hands clasped together. Perhaps because she often dealt with French people, her French was rather fluent. But regardless of how fluent she was, Jiang Chen, who only knew English, could not understand a thing, so he simply stood there and kept mum while waiting for Robert's next move. Thank you for your generosity in sharing your land. May your tribe flourish and your camels grow in flocks, Robert responded in fluent French. Even now, Jiang Chen could not figure out just how many languages this guy knew. Upon hearing this, the elderly female chief cracked a smile, her wrinkles scrunching up together. The following ceremony was quite simple. A man, whose head was wrapped in a frighteningly thick turban, carried 2 bowls of camel milk and placed them in front of them. According to the locals' custom, the thicker the turban and veil were, the more respect they were showing to their guests. It was said that in the past whenever a male guest visited here, he was also required to wear a headscarf, or at least his mouth must be covered. But now it appeared that they have made some concessions to foreign cultures in the process of adapting to modern times. It was unknown whether the female chief was chanting a mantra or praying, but she spoke for a long time before she gestured to the 2 people with a smile. Looking at that bowl of cloudy camel milk in front of him, Jiang Chen could not help but wonder if it was just freshly squeezed out. When he looked at Robert, he noticed that this man's eyebrows were furrowed as well. Is this really potable? Jiang Chen whispered in English. Yes, but trust me, you won't drink it again after you have your first. Although Robert's expression was somewhat bitter as he attempted a Herculean feat of downing the camel milk with his eyes closed. From the looks of it, this was his second time drinking this awful stuff. Jiang Chen was secretly speechless. Seeing Robert's swift action, the smile on the female chief's face became more brilliant. The faster the guest drank, the more it reflected their respect for the host. When she looked at Jiang Chen, however, her eyes grew even brighter. Robert had not even put the bowl down, Jiang Chen had already put the empty bowl on the table. It took Robert a while before he finally finished and placed the bowl on the table with a quivering hand. Thus when he saw Jiang Chen's empty bowl, his eyes almost popped out from its sockets. After coming out from the tribal chief's house, the 2 men received a warm farewell. Back in the car, Robert hummed as he wiped his mouth. *T, I feel like I've got a layer of grease in my stomach, Robert complained as he looked at Jiang Chen oddly. You okay with that strange smell? What strange smell? It was okay. Jiang Chen laughed loftily as he leaned back and then put his arms behind his head. Other than the grease that barely touched his mouth, he didn't drink a single drop and all of it was sent to the storage dimension. He was getting more adept at using this ability. After their friendly interaction with the neighbors, the 3 Hummers returned to the road once again. Finally, Jiang Chen saw a castle in the middle of the desert, future security. Chapter 154, Future Security. Barbed wire fences, concrete watchtowers, and buildings, these structures greatly resembled a small military base. What do you think? Robert turned around and smiled proudly. Not bad. There was also a satisfied expression on Jiang Chen's face. Very neat. The 3 Hummers stopped at the checkpoint at the entrance. The patrolling soldiers wearing dark sunglasses approached the car, and after verifying Robert's information, they performed a simple military salute and then released the checkpoint post. The soldiers patrolling here were mercenaries hired from a security company in South Africa. With Jiang Chen's arrival, 20 people in a camouflage combat uniform wielding M-series automatic rifles quickly assembled in a neat formation in the center of the base. These people only knew how to follow money and would not ask any questions. Their price was entirely based on the degree of danger of the mission, and Robert was able to negotiate with them for the price of $70,000. As the situation in the region escalated, Jiang Chen made some adjustments to the refugees' recruitment plan after deliberating it with Robert. The original plan was to hijack refugee ships, and then forcibly transfer them to the military base here. It was later changed to heading directly to the Syria border and masquerading as UA troops responsible for escorting the refugees, and tricking them to getting on the vehicle that would originally lead them to Europe. As for tricking them, the answer was quite simple. A flyer and a poster. European Labor Migration Program. Any male between 18 to 25 may register here. You can bring your spouse with you. Those who are interested may register here. The agency will arrange jobs for you. Required, 100. Seeing that not only you could bring your spouse and there was also a guaranteed work to boot, and not to mention these people were equipped with UA weapons, the registration turned out to be popular. After those who managed to qualify got into the vehicle, it didn't take long for them to realize that something was amiss. Upon confirming that they were heading in the wrong direction, the refugees began panicking and frantically scampered to get off the truck, but the mercenaries, who were merely doing their responsibility to complete their mission, remained unperturbed, and they forcefully dragged all the refugees back inside. After completing their escort duty, their mission was changed into guarding the refugees and preventing any attacks from extremist organizations or any other unforeseen situations. According to the contract, as soon as Jiang Chen's group arrived, they would immediately hand over the control of the base and depart. For them, this was probably the easiest task they ever had, even though the pay wasn't much. Seeing the retreating figures of the mercenaries, Jiang Chen gestured for the 10 Kane veterans to line up behind him and signaled Robert to turn on the speaker and gather the refugees to the square. The refugees were already converging in that direction. After witnessing the mercenaries, who had turned over the control of the base to Jiang Chen, drove away, they felt an amalgam of complex and confusing emotions. They previously thought those people were UA soldiers, who would take them to a safe location or at least a refugee camp near the border of a European country, but they didn't expect to be taken to a completely opposite direction and deep into the desert. At first, they thought it was the base of an extremist group, but it did not look quite like it in all respects. Other than preventing them from leaving, they didn't make many forceful demands. The soldiers put a number on them and even arranged rooms for them that were much more spacious than those from a refugee camp. And even if no one stopped them from leaving, there was nowhere they could go. This place was in the middle of the Sahara Desert. Without any means of transportation and sufficient supply, how far would their feet be able to take them? They would surely die if they met a sandstorm or if they got lost in the desert. After going through the initial phase of restlessness, they chose to wait and observe. At least these people didn't torture them, and there were not many restrictions on food and water. One could even say that life here was better than any refugee camps. Perhaps this place was the new refugee camp planned by the United Nations. After all, Europeans didn't want them to migrate to their country, so they funded the construction of facilities in the depths of the desert. There were a number of people with this kind of naive thinking. However, they were doomed to be gravely disappointed by Jiang Chen. Any gain had a price to it. Looking at the refugees standing all over the place, Jiang Chen tilted his head slightly and asked Ivan, who was standing on the side, "What do you think about these people? Do you have the confidence in training them?" Upon hearing this, a glimpse of pride flashed on Ivan's face. There was a time when he thought that he would only serve under a president who was not worthy of his allegiance, and serve as a cannon fodder for the sake of ideals that were not worth sacrificing for. However, as he stood there looking at the advanced training facility, and receiving the promised high salary, and when the boss asked him, "Are you confident?" the answer was a no-brainer. That would depend on what the boss wants. Ivan raised his head and replied firmly, as though he had just regained his pride as a soldier. Jiang Chen raised his eyebrows, his chin pointed toward the doorway, similar to the group of people that had just left. "Yes, boss." Ivan shouted vehemently, "But, boss, I have a problem." "Oh? Say it," Jiang Chen nodded, pleased with his determination. "I might go overboard." The soldier's eyes were burning with a fierce fighting spirit. Hearing that, Jiang Chen paused and then unexpectedly laughed. "If you go above and beyond, I'll be sure to give you a bonus." Jiang Chen patted his shoulder quite vigorously and stood on the podium while smiling in front of the refugees. Sensing that an authoritative figure had stood up, the refugees mustered their courage to voice their doubts. "Who in the world are you? Why did you take us here? We want to go to Europe. I heard Frankfurt provided refugee camp. Why didn't you send us there?" Jiang Chen ignored these questions, and continued fiddling with the microphone and turned on its switch. Buzz! The deafening static blared through the four corners of the square, and aside from Jiang Chen and the 10 instructors, almost everyone covered their ears while ducking down. "Ahem, seems like the mic is now working. You all can understand English, right? Then I'll start." He ignored the pairs of frightened, angry, confused, and helpless eyes. He paused while renewing the feeling from the wasteland. "You might think that you've been deceived. Why didn't you disembark in Greece but had been taken to Central Africa instead?" Glancing around the crowd, Jiang Chen laughed and continued, "That's right, I did trick you." The crowd instantly erupted. "This is unlawful. Are you not afraid of being prosecuted by International Court of Justice? This is against the law. Send us back." "Send you back? Sorry, I'm not obliged to do so. But if any of you wants to leave, you can go right ahead, the door is open," Jiang Chen said with a smile as he spread out his hands. Nobody spoke. Everyone knew that it would be stupid to cross the desert without any means of transportation. Warm shelter, delicious food, and clean water, you can't deny that your life here is much better than your refugee camps on the Syria border. "But at least we would still have our freedom," someone muttered in the crowd. "Ah, freedom. You're so poor, you only have your freedom and that's why you got on the truck, right? If you have money, you definitely could afford the ticket, isn't that right?" Jiang Chen smiled as he stared at the young man who interrupted him. The young man didn't expect to be stared at by the person on the podium. He swallowed and shrank back a little. But Jiang Chen did not seem to be looking at him and instead raised his hand and continued, "If you go to Europe, what then? You'll hole up in a government-provided shelter while spectating someone else's happiness? Quit your delusions. That place doesn't belong to you. You are but a refugee to them. Oh, you might say that you'll work hard, but when their natives are still unemployed, what kind of competitive edge do you think you'll have?" Hearing this, a lot of people lowered their head. They had given this problem some thought, but they never dared to think that far ahead. If one dwelled too much on misery, the courage to continue to move forward would become even slimmer, and not to mention the possibility of finding happiness in the future. Receiving donation, eating relief food and becoming the type of person who people would find suspicious wherever you go. I'll take the responsibility of telling you that indeed, you'll be able to survive, but you'll also stay in the shelter for the rest of your life. One day when your child wants to go to an amusement park, but because you have no money, you can only rack your brains on how to persuade your child that it's not a fun place. I don't know, how would you then feel about it? Do you still want to go to Europe so bad after hearing all that? Jiang Chen looked at the audience whose eyes had lost their vigor due to his momentum. Seeing this, he could not help the touch of smug smile slip through his face. "Where else can we go if we don't go to Europe?" A young man could not help but voice it out. "Even if I did trick you, it's not exactly a lie." Jiang Chen ignored his question and opened his arms and said while smiling, "Work, I've already arranged it for you. If you work for me, I'll provide you a stable living environment and a salary of $200 a month. Your salary will increase gradually depending on your performance. The contract period is 3 years, and after 3 years, you can then decide whether to leave and take your savings to any other country in the world or stay. But trust me, in less a year, you won't be thinking about that dumb thought. If you don't tell us the nature of work, how are we supposed to believe you?" There was another jarring question from the crowd again. "Nature of work? Isn't that obvious?" Jiang Chen acted like he was surprised and made a show of looking around for a moment before continuing, "This is a military base, other than soldiers, what else would it need?" Chapter 155, Once upon a time, there was an emperor. Another uproar. Naturally, the crowd flared up again. They thought that they would only be mining at an obscure place or engage in a hard labor, and the military facility was only there to supervise them, but what they did not expect was Jiang Chen wanted them to become mercenaries. Was this a joke? They left their home for the very reason of avoiding the war. If they were to participate in the battlefield again, wouldn't that defeat the purpose of fleeing? Someone asked this question out loud and denounced Jiang Chen that no one had the right to force civilians to wield weapons and set foot on the battlefield. Hearing this, all Kane veterans guffawed. "You're asking me what's the point? You'll understand that in the future. I'm too lazy to talk nonsensical things. You're asking what right do I have? Of course none, but like I've said, if you want to leave, go right ahead and leave. You have half an hour to decide, and if you still remain in the base after half an hour, then I would consider that you acquiesce by default." After delivering his speech, no matter how these people protested, Jiang Chen directly did an about-face and left the podium. There obviously won't be an applause for him, and he certainly didn't need one. Just like the fishbone base at the beginning, when they found themselves unable to resist and living, in fact, a comfortable life, they would gradually accept sooner or later. Moreover, Ivan would naturally train them to be absolutely loyal to the organization and shape them into becoming a soldier. Jiang Chen went next to Ivan and patted him on the shoulder. "I'll leave them in your care." "Yes, boss," the East Slavic soldier bellowed as he saluted and maintained his military posture. He nodded his head with satisfaction. He then waved at Aisha, who was standing quietly in the shadow, and then walked together towards the headquarters. While walking, Jiang Chen looked at Aisha and suddenly asked, "Say, Aisha, your hometown is in Syria, right?" "Uh-huh." After a moment of hesitation, he continued, Would my actions make you feel uncomfortable? After all, it's your hometown." "No, I will always stand by your side." Aisha shook her head, her cold face suddenly revealed a gentle smile, "and you are a very gentle person." Jiang Chen almost choked on his own saliva. "Are you kidding me? What do you mean by gentle?" "Ahem, although the first one moved me, I beg to differ on the latter part." He had never hesitated when killing except for the time when he made his first kill. Just then, a small hand reached out to clasp his hand. It seemed that after the night by the river, she fell in love with the feeling of holding hands, and she would always inadvertently reach out to his hand. "Do you remember the time when you were in the truck?" Aisha asked quietly. Although it was not clear why she mentioned the past, he still smiled and squeezed her hand nonetheless. "Of course I remember. How could I forget?" It was quite interesting to think that back then, he didn't even notice that Aisha was a girl. "Even to a stranger like me, you still lent a helping hand when you saw my hungry eyes." Jiang Chen smiled. Do you mean those biscuits? Those were cheap. Aisha shook her head and clenched Jiang Chen's hand. Her mouth was slightly curved in a smile. But you still chose to share rather than to sit on the sidelines and watch. Being alone on her quest for freedom, she was already numb to apathy. Jiang Chen slightly lowered his head and fell into deep thought. Shared? Have I really? Is this how people look at me? Aisha took a peek at Jiang Chen and smiled tenderly. There was once an emperor who was generous, kind, and brave. His territory stretched from west of Thrace, east of Indian River Plain, north of Amu Darya to the south of Persian Gulf. He acted as a conqueror in Damascus but gained the respect of the people he conquered. The Egyptians built a city in the desert to honor his meritorious deed, she muttered to herself as though she's recounting a legend. Hearing this, Jiang Chen suddenly burst out laughing. But the empire was only short-lived. Was she referring to Alexander? Towards to this remark, she merely smiled and did not disprove. Obviously, he could have just used bullets to suppress them, used their loved ones to threaten them, used force to make them surrender, made them live in tents, and made them live by his rules. But he didn't. The living condition here was much better compared to the refugee camp. He even provided them with a salary and hope. Feeling the warmth from his hand, Aisha closed her eyes, her lips curved into a smile. What kind of joke is this? Trek across the desert? The refugees were abuzz with protest. However, their objection fell on deaf ears as Ivan and the other instructors ignored the faces filled with righteous indignation and stood there like statues. The public outcry escalated but was cordoned off violent encounters. Force was always the best deterrence. All the trainers wore a pitch-back automatic rifle at their waist, the dark muzzle warned anyone who dared to incite violence. Half an hour passed quickly. Ivan cracked a smile and signaled his 9 compatriots to surround the refugees. In the command post, Jiang Chen and Robert stood side by side in front of the window while watching the situation in the field in good humor. *T, didn't think that you'd have the gift of the gab, said Robert, his cigarette dangling in his mouth and his arms were resting on the windowsill. I have a lot of talent. Jiang Chen grinned, he was also leaning against the windowsill. Rather than talent, it was more of unceasing practice. 3 months ago, if he were to talk in front of more than 100 people, he doubted if he would be able a single word. And now, they did not even need to prepare a speech. Do you know what I was thinking when you were giving that speech? What? Jiang Chen casually asked, his eyes were still on the field. A commotion started to break out in the field. Someone tried to grab Ivan's rifle but was easily suppressed with a single move. He thought. Robert made an amusing version of furor and laughingly remarked, but you didn't learn his way of provocation. You should have given them a loaf of bread and tell them, you can eat it as long as you swear your allegiance to me. There was no need. Jiang Chen chuckled and got up from the window. I've already given them enough incentives. With that, he left the command center. Staring at Jiang Chen's retreating figure, Robert shrugged his shoulders and once again resumed observing the square. There the riot was already over. Perhaps due to the experience they gained in Kane which trained them to be an expert in suppressing uprisings, Ivan was able to lead his 9 comrades to successfully control the situation. Although the refugees wore a scowl on their face, they still obediently divided into 10 columns, each led by a respective trainer. Their spouses and children were taken back to their assigned housing. The training started immediately. The first mission was to run 2 laps around the 20 hectares of the base. They would only be able to eat once they finished. Don't want to cooperate? Then starve together with your wife and children. If they only have themselves to think about, some of them would perhaps attempt to resist. However, hearing that it was not just them who would starve but also their family, everyone chose to compromise. Under the scorching sun, figures could be seen running around the base, leaving trails of dust behind them. When they dragged their exhausted body after finally finishing 2 laps, they all dropped to the ground. Not only did the ruthless instructors show not an iota of mercy, the devils also announced that the run would become part of their routine. Although they wanted to complain, they couldn't muster enough energy to do so. Fortunately, evening came which meant that the training for today was official over. When they dragged their beaten body to the cafeteria with their family and received their share of a hot meal, they suddenly felt that it didn't seem to be so bad. Roasted golden turkey, stewed mutton soup, bright green salad. As far as food is concerned, it was day and night compared to those of refugee camps. Maybe it was because of exhaustion after the exercise which stimulated their hunger, the dinner was especially delicious. A lot of people even had extra portions, and Jiang Chen didn't skimp on food. Hassan sat down beside his wife, Mary, carrying a bowl of mutton soup, and then grabbed a bun, dipped it into the soup, and took a big bite. Looking at her exhausted husband, Mary anxiously reached out to him and wiped the dust off his face. What did they make you do? Other than running, not much, but who knows what they'll do later. Damn it, those trainers are simply inhumane, Hassan cursed as he devoured the food in front of him. Because he expended quite a significant amount of energy, his appetite was huge enough to devour a camel. It was not clear whether it was intentional, but everyone there appeared to be a modern Christian, so there was no sign of veils and headscarves in the cafeteria. Hassan was munching his chicken and bread, while he pondered about on the future. He was 20 years old, his wife 19. They were planning to have a baby last year, but the conflict suddenly escalated overnight, as the shadow of IS enveloped half of Syria. Because he was considered a heretic, he naturally did not dare to stay in his hometown, so he took his wife away and came to the refugee camp on the border. Not knowing whether he should consider himself lucky or unfortunate for being taken here. Becoming a mercenary? He never considered this position. But now it seemed that there were not many options left for him. Will you go to the front line? Mary reluctantly asked. If I become a mercenary, probably, he grimaced and grunted as he stuffed his mouth with bread. He glanced at the trainers who were also having dinner in the cafeteria. He was very confused about what would happen in the future. But that 3-year contract gave him some hope. After 3 years, let's have a baby. I will work hard to give you and the children a stable environment, Hassan promised. Mary stared at him, her eyes were covered with mists, and then she lowered her head shyly. Okay. In any case, since his family was already here, he would just need to do his best for them. He would just wait and see whatever happened in the future. Hassan's thought reflected the thought of other recruits in the base. At least for this meal alone, there's nothing to complain about. Chapter 156, Finally Going Home. Early next morning, a team of 10 men was running outside the base wall. They were led by their respective trainers and would have stamina training 10 kilometers away from their location. Jiang Chen's requirement for Ivan was he only had half a year regardless of what method he utilized. 6 months later, he wanted to see disciplined and fast-moving troops. Moreover, this unit should be loyal to him alone. It was easy to ensure the loyalty of the soldiers. First was money, and second was electronic collar. Other than the job contract, Jiang Chen also signed a 10-year confidentiality agreement with the 10 Kane instructors. Under the terms of the agreement, they must wear the electronic collar with information detection ability to protect themselves from information leaks in the entire duration of the term. In this regard, the 10 Kane trainers did not put up any resistance because it was only 10 years, and they did not have any intention of disclosing anything. 6 months' time was very short. It would be impossible to train a special force capable of a mixture of combat requirement. Other new recruits would have to stay in camp for 7 months. Although relying on the virtual reality system for efficient training would only require 1 to 2 months to complete the new recruit training regimen, however, in the absence of a basic foundation, carelessly bringing these high-tech products out in the open would be highly unwise, more so because he did not have 100 training equipment in the first place. But of course, Jiang Chen also made it clear to Ivan that he didn't need a special force, but a competent and modern infantry capable of siege warfare. They didn't need to be able to execute special missions, merely being capable of fighting would suffice. As for their combat ability, there were a lot of ways to make up for it. Not enough stamina? Then give an injection. An E-grade genetic vaccine was really cheap and common in the 6th Street. Although it was not as powerful as Jiang Chen's C-grade injection, it was enough to improve their constitution to that of special force level. The only reason he did not inject them yet was he wanted them to train their perseverance and endurance. They would be given an injection over the course of training. Although Ivan and the trainers were skeptical about the drug that could improve their physical shape, upon seeing the certainty in their boss, they finally believed it was real. In spite of their misgivings, after being injected, they were surprised to discover that their strength and reflex improved by leaps and bounds. Only then their skepticism finally disappeared. They were now more confident with the 6-month deadline training mission. Of course, Jiang Chen didn't tell them it was a genetic medicine. He only told them it was a mysterious Han medicine. That's right, it's a traditional Han medicine. To begin with, from a foreigner's perspective, Han medicine in itself was a very mysterious thing. And precisely because of its mysterious nature that he was not pressed to explain himself. It was also worth mentioning that genetic vaccine functioned by fine-tuning the genetic sequence of somatic cells and stem cells without affecting genes in certain cells. In other words, there was no need to worry about genetic issues. Bad marksmanship? Then make the technology shoot for you. AK-47? M4A1? Obviously, they won't be using these junks. 100 years in the future, these seemingly decent rifles would be extremely weak. Just like how Thompson's submachine gun could still be used now, almost all new rifles could definitely outmatch its performance. The 150 Reapers assault rifles that Jiang Chen brought from the Fishbone base, whether its stability, penetration, and accuracy, it outshined all modern firearms. After all, there was a fundamental difference between the structure of warfare in the future and the present. Even light infantries wore nano-combat suist as well as kinetic skeletons. Not to mention the heavy infantries that were fully equipped with power armors. If the rifle penetration was low, it would be difficult to even penetrate the enemy's armor. Since this was a NATO standard Reaper assault rifle, its penetration capability was naturally unequivocal. Although it was normal in the future with highly advanced science, it was ridiculous in the modern world where it could easily penetrate through steel or concrete. Logically speaking, the higher the explosive power, the more recoil the solider would receive, but because of the special design of firearms, the recoil was significantly reduced. Furthermore, because of its compact internal design, needless to say, the accuracy was superb. The only problem was the ammunition. Because they couldn't use a modern ammunition without a secure base, Jiang Chen did not dare to move the bullet production line, so he could only carry the ammunition himself. Fortunately, the trade between the Fishbone base and the 6th Street had just been finalized, and the additional batch of ammunition he purchased had arrived just in time. He shipped 6 months' worth of training ammunition to the armory, which temporarily solved the problem. Other than rifles, with the development in the apocalypse side, Jiang Chen would continuously transport even more ridiculously incredible equipment to this world. Such as kinetic skeletons, heat sensor grenade. Jiang Chen entrusted all responsibility of training to Ivan. The veteran was well respected among his peers, and so he was more at ease in leaving him with the day-to-day operation of the base. As for logistics, it was also easy to solve. According to Robert's suggestion, he set up an office for the future security in Niamey and hired local experts to handle the problem. The only thing he needed to worry about was to provide the operating cash flow to the company's account, and the daily expenses, salary, and logistics, and other aspects of affairs would be coordinated by the office. At the end of each month, there would be a detailed bill sent to his email. After spending 2 days traveling between the base and Niamey, Jiang Chen finally settled everything on this side. The manager of future security was a man called Barkley, whom he found in the talent market in Niger. Despite being only 35 years old, he already had 15 years of relevant work experience. He looked stable and trustworthy. The labor cost in Niger was very meager, $400 monthly salary was already considered high in the local market. Towards such generous paycheck, the black guy was ecstatic as he promised to take care of everything with perfection. Jiang Chen was pleased with his eagerness because it meant he could worry less about it. With the base starting to operate on the right track, it was finally time to go home. When they headed to the airport, they took Niger Ministry of Commerce vehicle. As a good host, the Minister of Commerce Amani personally sent them to the airport. "We hope you come back soon, Mr. Jiang. You will always be Niger's friend." Armani shook hands with him enthusiastically with a bright smile on his face. $2 million worth of investment to build a road from the national highway to the undeveloped area. He had gained a lot from this friend of his from the east, and so he was naturally very enthusiastic. "Of course, I wish our friendship will last through eternity. Thank you for your warm hospitality. Farewell." Jiang Chen released his hand and then led Robert, Nick, and Aisha into the airport. After passing through security, Robert heaved a sigh of relief and rolled his eyes. "I can finally leave this goddamn place. Heck, when I get back, the first thing I'll do is to take a nice, long shower and then go to the hospital to get a gastric suction. Then spread your seeds to some Hollywood chicks," Jiang Chen teased. "Ahem, of course, nightlife is necessary to relieve some stress at work, you know. The next time you come to Los Santos, I'll take you to experience it." Robert chuckled. "What about you? What are you planning to do when you get back?" "Shower, sleep and then rest for a few days." Jiang Chen shrugged and sat on the chair in the waiting room. Aisha sat right beside him, eyes looking everywhere. However, much to her disappointment, unlike the airport invite, there was no magazine to pass her time on. "Don't be so boring, you have to learn to enjoy life properly." Robert sat on the opposite side of Jiang Chen, crossed his legs, and leaned comfortably against the seat. "Then what's the use of making so much money?" Nick scanned the lobby of the waiting room and then headed for the coffee machine. "Haha, how do you know I didn't enjoy myself? Let me tell you, when I made my first money, the first thing I did was to spend it lavishly," Jiang Chen said proudly, not in the least bit ashamed. "Oh? I didn't expect this, haha. By the way, buddy, I've got a fun idea. Why don't we share what we did with our first money?" Robert was suddenly interested and sat up straight. Meanwhile, Nick came over with a coffee and sat down next to Robert. "We'll get Nick to go first." Robert patted Nick on the shoulder while laughing. Nick took a sip and looked at Robert with confusion. After hearing the explanation, the taciturn Slavic man gave the most ordinary statement. "Bought a house in Los Santos and then got a dog." As far as UA citizens' lifestyle was concerned, his couldn't be any more average. Okay, I take back what I said, Nick is the most boring person. He ignored Nick's confused look and then coughed and continued, my turn, I remember it was 5 years ago, I was still helping a Mexican smuggled illegal firearms. On the day of payout, he gave me $50,000, and the first thing I did was. At this point, Robert's face went red out of nowhere, scratched his nose, as he was too embarrassed to continue. Ahem. I found 2 16-year-old high school students at the bar. In short, I got rid of my virginity. Robert had completely abandoned his sense of shame. He then looked at Jiang Chen, okay, buddy, your turn. This old pervert. Jiang Chen laughingly thought in his mind. The first sum of money. He wanted to say what happened in Sonya but suddenly halted as he awkwardly looked at Aisha. He seemed to be somewhat similar to Robert, the old pervert. After making money, the first thing he did was go to Sonya and got himself a lover. Sensing Jiang Chen's gaze, Aisha looked back at him puzzled. However, her pure expression made it even harder for Jiang Chen to open his mouth. Robert smirked and then whispered, I understand, we're all men here. No, wait, my situation is a little different from yours. In any case, saying it's his first. No need to explain, I understand. Fu *K, what do you know? Chapter 157, I'll teach you fitness? This past couple of days, Jiang Chen was very idle. The first step of the island capture project had been completed, and 6th Street had also been stabilized. Out of nowhere, he suddenly found himself free. He walked out from the bedroom, yawning. After a brief wash, he went to the kitchen and sat across Aisha while stretching. Did you stay up late again? Aisha asked with concern. Played a bit too late last night. Jiang Chen reached out and grabbed a slice of toast. Coffee, toast, and omelette for breakfast. Aisha's cooking was getting better. While munching, he reached out and turned on the TV. Don't sleep too late, Aisha reminded softly. He took a sip of coffee, and the bitterness made his brain sober. The widescreen TV was playing the news. Yesterday noon, a crossfire occurred in the northern suburbs of Osk, Kane, the largest one since the turn of the year. The civilian forces used cannons, self-propelled artillery, and other heavy weapons against the government-controlled area. Currently, Minsk agreement is in name only. On the other hand, UA accused Russia of deploying artillery on the border. Watching blankly at the artillery bombardment on the news screen, Jiang Chen took a bite of the toast. Did they start fighting again? Truth be told, seeing the cannon homing on the screen could not be compared to the astonishment of seeing it in the front line. Aisha appeared to be indifferent towards these things and was concentrating on her breakfast. I'm going rusty these days, Jiang Chen complained out of boredom. Aisha put the omelette on the toast, blew a few times, before taking a huge bite. After hearing how Jiang Chen felt, she hesitated a little before suggesting, how about I teach you a good workout? Workout? Jiang Chen was stupefied. I've taken the injection, so even without exercise, I can still maintain my body in tip-top condition. He simply had to praise the beauty of science and technology. In addition to physical fitness, there are still other benefits to exercise such as maintaining your figure and keeping your body flexible, Aisha muttered. Figure? Speaking of this, I still haven't touched the fitness equipment that we bought. It's always you who have been using it. Jiang Chen scratched his chin thoughtfully and suddenly clapped. Then it's decided, later you can teach me to exercise. Aisha smiled tenderly and nodded. Shortly after breakfast, the two stood face to face on the yoga mat. Aisha had already changed into a workout outfit of a small black top, her brown color was tied into a ponytail. Looking lively and enticing. Curves outlined by tight clothes, bumps faintly visible. Guess it would be troublesome if he continued to stare. Jiang Chen subtly moved his line of sight. A dazzling selection of fitness equipment comparable to those of outside gyms was located on the 3rd floor of the home gym. At the corner, a virtual reality training chamber could be seen, and before entering the password, it looked like an oddly shaped, covered bathtub. Fitness is divided into 2 kinds, one is aerobic exercise such as treadmills and bicycles. The other is non-aerobic exercise such as sit-ups and weightlifting. Without noticing the strange look from Jiang Chen, Aisha went to the next exercise equipment and started explaining earnestly. When it came to exercise, she was naturally quite experienced. After all, she spent almost all her days in the gym. If it was not completing her daily homework in the virtual reality, it was using this equipment to exercise her body. After listening to Aisha explain the key concepts, the next step, of course, was the practical application. Jiang Chen twisted his neck, as he eagerly stepped on the treadmill and started it under Aisha's guidance. Speed, 10. I don't seem to be feeling anything. According to the value on the EP, his muscle strength was already at 30, his reflex was nearing 29, and thus this type of exercise was indeed too simple for him. Impatiently, he pressed the plus sign button, making the speed increased until it finally stopped at the limit of 30. His feet were practically dancing, but he still didn't feel an iota of pressure. There's no point in running so fast, Aisha smiled wryly. Why do I feel that this treadmill is pretty much useless to me? Jiang Chen had a similar wry smile and pressed the minus button until the treadmill came to a slow stop. After Jiang Chen got off from the treadmill, Aisha took over. She took a deep breath and pressed the start button. Speed, 5. Although the injection of that weird medicine improved a lot of aspects of your body quite significantly, daily exercising to maintain your health is still important. Not so fast, jogging should suffice. This helps tone the body and keeps the body flexible. While jogging in constant speed, Aisha was explaining it to Jiang Chen simultaneously. Flexibility? Body coordination? Jiang Chen nodded thoughtfully. But when he thought about body shapes, for some reason, the first thing that came into his head was the sexy vest line of her waist. And looking at her shoulders and arms moving rhythmically along with the jiggling of her firm and small breasts. Not good. Nosebleed. Jiang Chen embarrassedly covered his nose and quickly looked away. A good thing that nothing came out of his nose. Aisha gave him a puzzled look. Done with her demonstration, she turned off the treadmill and jumped off. Now for the non-aerobic exercise. Where should we begin? Let's start with that. Looking around, her eyes lit up when she spotted the elliptical trainer near the door. An odd-looking equipment connected to all four sides, which Jiang Chen had seen before in the university gym. Put simply, by sitting there, you can perform pull-ups, core exercise, parallel bars and other series of complex exercise. I rarely use this because it will easily build up muscles, but it's suitable for guys. Aisha sat on top of it and smiled softly at Jiang Chen. I'm going to demonstrate for you. She adjusted the weight to 20 kilograms, took a deep breath, and extended both of her arms up high while holding the bar. Too much power. A weight of this level was naturally very easy for someone like her with a genetic vaccine, but even so, due to the tension made from the exertion of her arms, the round softness on her chest looked like it was about to pop out. Jiang Chen unconsciously swallowed his saliva. Although he knew it was bad to gawk at certain parts of a girl, still he was unable to move his gaze away. However, this wasn't the most troublesome thing. Having finished with the stretching exercises of her upper and lower muscles, Aisha, who remained oblivious to his gaze, put her arms against the pad of the butterfly clips and then both of her arms snapped towards her chest. Because of the pressure, the soft protrusion was squeezed under the force of her arms. Worse still, because of the aerobic exercise, Aisha's forehead was sweating profusely. The small top was becoming more transparent as it got stuck on her skin. What's the problem? Aisha looked perplexedly at Jiang Chen, who was covering his nose. Nothing, my nose is just a little bit itchy. Jiang Chen laughed dryly. He did not want to admit that he was thinking of naughty things while she was teaching so earnestly. While still confused, Aisha didn't pursue the subject. She pressed her legs against the pad, ready to demonstrate the next set of moves. However, at this time, she accidentally saw something she shouldn't have seen. Because Jiang Chen was also wearing workout clothes, the design of the sports pants was rather loose. That tent-shaped bulge. Aisha's cold face turned crimson, she ducked her head down shyly, fingers rubbing absent-mindedly against the training equipment. Do you want to?" she uttered in a quivering voice. Hearing this, it was Jiang Chen's turn to blush. His conscience told him that he should refuse this time to show his integrity and solve this misunderstanding. Yes, he nodded without thinking. Although his thought was very praiseworthy, his mouth and body, on the other hand, were both very honest. Then let's go to. Here is good. It's already lunchtime when they left the gym. Seeing the time on the EP, Jiang Chen could not help but smile wryly. Now with Aisha feeling disoriented, she definitely would not be able to cook anymore. What a blunder. He shook his head and went into the kitchen. He turned on the rice cooker, poured half a cup of rice into it, and mixed it with water. Putting on the apron, he took a spatula and cooked the scrambled eggs with tomato, which he hadn't cooked for a long time, and then he made a cucumber soup. This was the limit of his cooking, as he certainly didn't know how to cook lamb and beef. But this should be all right for today. He brought the dishes on the table while humming. He then returned to the kitchen and removed the dough from the fridge. Aisha was still not used to eating rice. It was usually Jiang Chen who ate rice, and she with her bread. He stuck the dough into the microwave, patted his hand, and pressed the start button. Watching the golden bread spinning in the microwave, he narcissistically touched his chin while nodding. Why am I so talented? Capable of doing business and capable of cooking, wait. This shouldn't be how a man is described. Just then, he suddenly felt a soft touch behind him. A small hand came around him from behind and embraced him. Ahem, sorry, I've been too rough. Are you feeling better? Jiang Chen said as he turned around and scratched his head awkwardly. Uh-huh. Thank you. Thank you? Wait, what are you crying for? Aisha's face was tightly pressed against his warm back. She didn't respond and only rubbed the corner of her eyes against his clothes. Just 10 minutes ago, she slowly recovered from her woozy state. When she realized it was already lunchtime, as a competent wife, which she'd always strictly told herself to be, she immediately got up, leaned on the wall for support, and dragged her body to the kitchen. When she saw the dishes on the table, for some reason, she felt her eyes tearing up. She gently moved to the kitchen door and saw the hot bread that Jiang Chen made for her. She stepped forward and embraced him, her face pressing tightly against the warm and strong back, and her delicate eyelashes closing. Sorry for hurting you, in the future. No, this is good. Aisha murmured happily. Chapter 158, A Popular Game. After lunch, Aisha returned to the gym saying she was going to clean the place. After all, she had been injected with a genetic vaccine, and thus she was almost completely recovered at the moment. Jiang Chen was sitting on the sofa while watching TV to pass the time. Yawning, he was about to get up and go back for a nap when his mobile phone suddenly rang. He took out his mobile phone and read, Xiaxiyu. He pressed the answer button and lazily put the phone to his ear. Hello? What's up? I have something to tell you. It's about a game. Xiaxiyu's excited voice came through, which made Jiang Chen extremely surprised. I guess it's a good news. Jiang Chen laughed. That's right. Xiaxiyu leaned back against the office chair with a rare proud smile appearing on her face. After a period of marketing and beta testing, our company's first mobile game, New Era, is now officially live. According to the recent daily statistics that had just been released, its first day of downloads exceeded 15 million mark, setting a record for highest downloads for mobile games. After practicing in front of the mirror numerous times, when Xiaxiyu finally shared the good news with the boss, her voice still went off-key due to extreme excitement. What the foo *K? The news practically made Jiang Chen jumped up from the sofa. Ahem, no cursing please, Xiaxiyu admonished lightly before continuing. According to the server's data, the highest number of concurrent users broke through 5 million. It's better for you to come to the company this afternoon, so I can show you the back-end stats directly. I'll be there right away. After saying that, Jiang Chen hung up the phone and was immediately out the door. Wanghai University, men's dormitory. A guy with a pair of glasses was staring at the screen of his mobile phone, his fingers moving swiftly on the touchscreen. His spectacles reflected the fighting scene of a role-playing game character. For eyes, what are you playing? Or are you watching porn? Tian Zhongjie, his bunkmate, moved his chair closer and stretched his neck to take a peek at his screen. Tian Zhongjie had just finished playing League of Legends and had almost smashed his keyboards because of those noobs. He was so angry that he didn't want to play anymore. After 20 losses, he closed the game directly, and then opened the file and uninstalled the game. This was his 10th time of uninstalling this game. Most online games were either filled with RMB players, or filled with cheats. Although a lot of noobs played LOL, the quality of the game itself was still quite good. At least, the RMB skins wouldn't increase the user's attack damage. Thus, after his anger had abated, he would find himself unable to stop from downloading the game again. Despite that, every time he finished uninstalling, he would swear that he would chop his hand off if he ever installed it again. Chen Hong cast his friend a sidelong glance before returning his gaze back to the screen and then controlled his character to the direction of the main city. What are you being so mysterious about? Tian Zhongjie had just AFK'd, so he had nothing better to do. He then got up and stood behind him. Chen Hong ignored him and continued to stare intently at the screen. Just then, the dormitory door opened and Gao Fei, who had just finished playing basketball, walked in. Yo, for eyes, didn't you say that only dumbass play mobile game? Then why are you playing it? Gao Fei quipped. He curiously stood behind Chen Long trying to see what he was playing. What, no way. Is this truly a mobile game? As a result, Gao Fei was also unable to peel his eyes off the screen either. The texture of the image, the detailed character design, as well as the spectacular gameplay, those 3D mobile games are nothing compared to this. No, not just mobile games, even Skyrim on his desktop couldn't compare to this game. That's right, this is not a mobile game, and that's why I'm playing it. Chen Hongting pushed his eyeglasses up and scowled at the completely stunned Tian Hongjie. Gao Fei gulped and jeered, the graphics is so good, the game content must be meh. Chen Hong glanced at him before continuing, open world and 2:1 continental scale map. It combined the adventure element of an RPG and the management element of an SLG. Player can choose to roleplay as an adventurer or become a lord managing a piece of land. You can also open a business and become a merchant to fight pirates in the sea. Whether it's the graphics or the content, even if it's compared to PC games, it's a 3A godly masterpiece, Chen Hong said with absolute certainty. Although he had always been extremely critical when it came to games, he had yet to find any flaws in New Era. Could your crappy phone even handle a map with a size of 2 continents? Tian Zhongjie's jaw was about to drop to the ground. He felt like his LOL addiction was still not beyond redemption. The game is only 300 megabytes. 300 megabytes, you're pulling my leg. Gao Fei uttered in complete disbelief. The company stated that they used the newest data compression technology as well as cloud computing technology. Anyway, I don't understand any of that stuff, I only can care about playing. Oh, for a day, I consume 10 megabytes of data, so it's not very high. Chen Hong killed another monster and deftly picked up the loot of silver coins and equipment and then locked onto the next one. I can see that you have been killing monsters for a while now, don't you find that boring? Tian Zhongjie noticed that he had only been killing monsters after watching him play for a long time. Sure, the fighting scene and graphics were great, but wouldn't it be too boring to be hacking monsters constantly? Would you still feel bored if there's money involved? Chen Hong responded to him as though he was talking to an idiot. Money? RMB, you know that, don't you? He added, sighing. What the fu *k, the in-game currency can be exchanged for RMB. Gao Fei asked in disbelief, his eyes almost popping out. The game operator doesn't exchange gold coins, but they offer a platform similar to Diablo 3's auction house. Players are free to price and sell gold coins on a consignment basis. This system is somewhat similar to the stock price, where the lower price is given preference. The game operator will only collect 5% commission fee, and they only take 10% commission for the equipment auction. While speaking, Chen Hong's eyes were burning with passion like crazy. During beta testing, Future 1.0 distributed a high amount of activation code to VIP members. There's quite a number of wealthy players playing this game according to the official data collected during the beta phase. That's to say, there is a high probability that RMB players would beat your sorry ass. Gao Fei said in derision. That's how an average person would think. Chen Hong cast him a haughty look. New Era didn't create an item mall. The purchased points can only be used to expand the warehouse or purchase skins that don't affect the balance of the game. In other words, it's as similar to LOL Store? Tian Zhongjie's eyes lit up, and he suddenly felt an urge to download and play the game. Chen Hong ignored his friend's question and muttered, do you remember what I said before? There are many ways to play this game. You can be an adventurer, a lord and so on. Does it has anything to do with those RMB players? Gao Fei asked, frowning. Of course. Chen Hong's eyes were practically indistinguishable from gold coins. He licked his cracked lips before continuing, the condition to become a lord is one has to buy a city lease for 100,000 gold coins and then get the city qualification. Imagine if you were a rich player, would you rather hunt monsters like what I'm doing, or would you rather become the lord of a city with countless followers? That's nonsense. Gao Fei scoffed, but he seemed to have suddenly thought of something as his eyes widened. Wait, if the city lease costs 100,000 gold, the auction house. That's right, if you play the game normally, it would be impossible to obtain 100,000 gold coins in such a short amount time. Killing a single boar would only drop 2 silver coins and killing 50 would barely give you 1 gold coin. So to become a lord, the only way to acquire gold coins is through the auction house. But would there be that many people willing to buy a city lease? Tian Zhongjie asked. Let me give you a straightforward data. At present, the price of a single gold coin in the auction house is set to 5 renminbi. So for every 10 boars I kill, I would make 1 renminbi. The more Chen Hong talked, the more motivated he became. What the fu *k, a land lease will cost 500,000 RMB. That is insane. Gao Fei uttered in disbelief. You noob, there are rich people who are not afraid to squander 1 million while playing Plants vs. Zombies. Don't you know building a territory is similar to farming? Moreover, through taxation, production of materials and other ways to earn money, would you still be worried about not making a return? I'll tell you a rumor that I heard from one of my friends. Have you heard about Bloodsea Guild of a Sword 4? Because of the popularity of New Era, they are planning to switch to this game. They are also currently raising funds in preparation for something big. Not only wealthy people, a lot of game workshops are also eyeing the city lease, so you can just imagine the future of this game. Isn't Sword 4 a PC game? Tian Zhongjie could not help but ask out loud. If the mobile game is more fun than PC game, would you rather play a PC or a mobile game? The future belongs to the mobile platform. Chen Hong himself was becoming passionate about the future. Not only that, it can also be said that city building is the biggest feature of the game. The sandbox-like settings would allow the players to design their city based on their own preference. The city can be built anywhere from a certain distance from another city. And depending on the terrain and the map itself, the established city will receive a corresponding reward that would allow recruitment of special NPCs to attract other solo players. Do you know what this means? This means the earlier the city is established, the higher your advantage will be. You can get mines that produce iron ore, coastal areas fit for ships to dock, as well as unique NPCs roaming on the map. All major guilds are buying gold coins in order to seize those good spots. My plan right now is to kill monsters to gain gold coins and then sell the gold for money. Once I leveled up, I will explore the deeper parts of the continents. It'll be great if I can trigger some hidden mission. That would be really crazy. An ambitious expression appeared on Chen Hong's face. But wouldn't the value of gold depreciate after a while if everyone purchased the city lease? Gao Fei asked anxiously. The reason why he was asking was because he suddenly had the idea of making money from the game. Just killing 10 monsters would earn him 1 renminbi. This was something really enticing for someone who doesn't have much pocket money. You're overthinking it. Wouldn't you need to build establishments after building a city? Wall, city hall, residential buildings, farm, etc., all of which cost money. In addition to city lords, there are sea explorers. Although putting up a shop would not cost 100,000 gold, a small shop would at least be 500. As for the mega vessel, it costs 1,000 gold and above. The auction house wouldn't interfere with game content, and the difference between the demand for gold and RMB would prompt frequent trading between the players. As long as the operator continued to push new game contents which would prevent the value of gold from depreciating, the game would continue to survive. Considering the impeccable game quality, the number of users, as well as the continued growth of Future 1.0, Gao Fei's eyes turned brighter and brighter the more he thought about it. For eyes, I have an idea. Why don't we, of Dorm 101, start a game workshop? 1. RMB players, the equivalent of pay-to-win players. Chapter 159, The Trap. Whenever Lingyu Technologies' name cropped up, most mobile games fanatics would automatically think of games with unique designs and outstanding gameplay, such as I Am ATM and Dota History. Inside the Lingyu Technology building in Wanghai City, Ling Zhongtian was sitting in front of the office table with a dark face as he silently looked at the information on his table. The manager responsible for mobile game development, Qian Haiming, had his head lowered while sweating profusely and waiting for the boss reprimand. After a long while, Ling Zhongtian finally spoke. In 1 month, Dota History's ACU dropped by 10% and KPI indices decreased by 17%. This is the goose that lays a golden egg you're telling me about? And what about I Am ATM? What's your team doing for the past month? His voice was trembling due to rage. ACU referred to the average concurrent users, while KPI referred to key performance indicators. The first was related to the sustainability of the game, while the latter was related to the game's profitability. At this moment, however, in front of him was a report that showed the stats of their 2 most profitable mobile games were in great decline. It was still Fu * King OK last month. Bang! Ling Zhongtian threw the document in his hands on the table with great force. His lungs were on the verge of exploding due to anger. The scolded Qian Haiming had a face of being greatly wronged. It was really not his fault. Swallowing, he tried to organize his sentence in his head before explaining quietly to his boss, "Boss, this really cannot be blamed on us." Taking a deep breath, Ling Zhongtian picked up the cup on the table to take a sip of tea, and gradually calmed the anger in his chest. It's that new era, right? Uh-huh. Qian Haiming felt secretly relieved that the boss understood the situation, but the atmosphere remained tense as ever. These 2 games of the company were very profitable, and Dota History had a record of a staggering cash flow of 200 million per month. Although the result was somewhat watered down, it was not far off from the truth. The issue had to do with Dota History, despite running for over a year, had nothing new to offer. Unlike PC games, mobile games' real-time interactive capability was already very limited. Thus, it was destined to severely limit the player's likelihood to stick to the game through social interaction. It could be said that when mobile game players quit the game, the reluctance to part with the game would be mainly due to the equipment and diamonds and not because of their good friends in the game. After last year's success, the active users of Dota History had been gradually decreasing. However, Qian Haiming had still a bit of skill, as he led the entire project team to devise numerous unique events which allow the KPI to barely hit the mark. But who would have thought that a highly competitive game would take the market by storm and took a huge piece of the pie away? Ling Zhongtian fell into a deep contemplation while looking at the report on the table. As the president of a corporation, he obviously would not be clueless about the existence of the most promising mobile game in the market. The game's massive content made it difficult for players to get bored due to repetitive gameplay. It also offered real-time interaction comparable to that of PC games, which meant that when players play the game, it really felt like an online game rather than playing just with a single list of friends. And more importantly, how come it didn't consume a lot of data? Ling Zhongtian was so jealous that he wanted to spew forth profanity, or perhaps he had already cursed in his mind. The 3 points above were the major limitations of today's mobile game development. All major game developers that wanted their share of the market were racking their brains to come up with the best possible solutions to overcome these 3 major hurdles. Too much game content? If users saw a game with a few gigabytes, they would be too lazy to download it. High hardware specs? This would cause lag and make the phone hot. High data usage? This might make telecom companies happy, but this would definitely enrage the users. Thus, the game would naturally be unable to survive. How to use software packers to include more game contents that most of the mobile phones would be able to run, and would not consume too much data. This has always been a great source of concern in the industry. Fortunately, came a software which realized the inspiration of many programmers. It was Future 1.0. By simplifying the algorithm, the performance of mobile phones was increased by 3 times, and energy consumption was reduced twice as much. This would undoubtedly enable them to recapture the ideas that had been cut off before. Ling Zhongtian was indeed a man with foresight. When he saw the download record of Future 1.0 continually being refreshed, he immediately issued instructions to Chen Haiming to gather people from project development team to develop high-specs, large-scale mobile game. The idea was undoubtedly insane. At present, there was not a single mobile game that could meet the standard of the so-called large-scale mobile game in the market despite every developer's bluff and bluster. To deploy a large amount of technical resource to venture into an entirely unknown market was unquestionably a huge gamble. The reason for making such decision was because he was able to foresee the change in the future of the development of mobile games. Given how Future 1.0 had turned out, the future would have high-quality games with high resolution and rich, diverse game contents that could compete with PC games to fill the gaps in the current market. PC and console games would continually be pushed out of the market, and the mobile game industry would only going to get bigger. The only thing he needed to consider was how to gain the upper hand and acquire a bigger slice of this pie. However, his ambition was already deflated before it was realized. Turned out that Future 1.0 had a far greater ambition. Before they gained a foothold in the market, they quickly launched an independent game and ventured into the mobile game market. New era? In the beginning, Ling Zhongtian had not given their promotion of Open Game World, Sandbox Game Map, the strongest freedom in history, much thought yet. Who didn't know how to brag? Which developers did not vaunt their own game? Not just the players, even their own marketing staff didn't believe in the marketing. But when the game went online, Ling Zhongtian's expression instantly turned green with envy. He heard a lot of empty promises before, but it was his first time seeing all the promises got fulfilled. Its unbelievable game quality set a whole new record in terms of gameplay. With the support of the Future 1.0's user base, New Era took the market by storm with no less than the impact that Future 1.0 produced and once again become a hot topic of the media. Future 1.0 made headlines again. Without a doubt, New Era had seized the initiative and took the lead in this market, which he had such high hopes for. How are things going on your end? Ling Zhongtian no longer reprimanded Chen Haiming, and instead asked about the large-scale mobile game that was currently under development. Hearing this, Chen Haiming looked inconceivably bitter. It is almost developed and currently in alpha phase, but compared to New Era. As the project manager, no one knew better than him the product his own team was developing. If the quality was almost comparable, he would at least try to boost his own project by a bit to let the boss see they really tried and achieved some results. However, after personally playing New Era for a few hours, he went on playing for a while, and it was undoubtedly fun that he couldn't help but expand the warehouse. They had completely lost. Hard, just do everything you can to utilize your ability and creativity. Try a bit harder in the operations, Ling Zhongtian advised exhaustedly as he rubbed his temples. Yes, boss. Chen Haiming nodded and quickly left the office. Elbows on the table, Ling Zhongtian stared at the report blankly. He's already 50 years old, and regardless how tough his body was, his temple already had a white streak on it. After being in business for so many years and starting with only a handful people in a 10 SQM studio to gradually becoming the industry leader in the mobile game development, it was his first time experiencing such troublesome issue. What made it troublesome was not the game itself, rather the chain reactions that came with it. The mobile game industry was huge, too big to imagine, so no matter how voracious the appetite of the future technology was, it would be impossible to completely dominate the industry. In most users' phone, it would be impossible not to have more than one game. Thus, even if they lost the large-scale game market, Lingu technology still maintained a strong market share within the industry. However, with the emergence of this large-scale mobile game, users' spending habits would undoubtedly have a huge impact. Lingyu Technology's continuous profit decline during this period was a clear indicator of this problem. Similar to the analogy that if you have an excellent game on your phone, would you still pay for a game like Tetris? Even if you did, it probably wouldn't be much. The mobile industry had been divided for the longest time, where everyone had similar games comparable to one another, and not one company had been able to monopolize the market. However, that was before that game was launched. New Era quickly gathered all players who were already bored with monotonous mobile games in the market. It revolutionized the perspective of users about the mobile games having monotonous content and poor real-time interactive capability. Since the inception of this game, their days began to become difficult. And from the looks of it, it's not only Lingyu Technologies that got the short end of the stick. While Ling Zhongtian mulled this over, he lightly tapping on the table with his finger. Perhaps it's high time to give this rookie a lecture? While thinking of this, Ling Zhongtian grimaced. He picked up the phone and called his old rival. Hello, Wang Zong. Haha, how have you been? Okay, enough chit-chat. It's been a tough day for everyone. Don't you think we should do something? Shifting the public opinion, providing funds for development of hacks, exploiting New Era's vulnerabilities, hiring hackers to attack the server. There were still many things they could do to preserve their interests. Just be careful not to get caught in the act. Ling Zhongtian hung up the phone, his mouth curved in a sneer. Regardless how powerful future technology is, how would they be able to ward off attacks from all sides? Chapter 160, What's a National Husband? Driving to Guanglu Building, Jiang Chen closed the door and narcissistically looked in the car mirror before striding towards the front door. He was slightly embarrassed. As the president, he was fairly certain that he came to the company not more than 10 times. Most of the companies that chose Guanglu as their office space dealt with information technology, similar to future technology. The commonality between them all was that their lunch breaks were really short. It was only 1:30, but there was nobody to be seen in the lobby. Just as he was about to take the elevator up, he heard his name. It's Jiang Chen? Seems like it is him. Hearing the gossipy discussions, Jiang Chen dumbfoundedly looked over at the lobby reception. Two female receptionists whispered to each other as they giggled. When they noticed Jiang Chen looking over at them, they didn't stop but rather waved at him. Hey, Ying, he looked over. Wait, let me send a Weibo. Weird. Jiang Chen muttered to himself as he got on the elevator. When the elevator stopped on the 12th floor, a proud smile surfaced on his face as the words of future technology came into view. 3 months ago, future technology existed only in Xia Shiyu's Word document, but now it had already grown to this scale. He made a beeline towards Xia Shiyu's office. Sitting behind the front desk was a beautiful girl. Jiang Chen didn't recognize her. She was most likely one of the new hires. As for the previous 2 receptionists, they must have been transferred to other departments. Compared to when the company just started, the number of employees had already doubled. Considering the company's new project team, Xia Shiyu went ahead and rented the 13th floor to be used by the New Era team. When the beauty sitting at the front desk saw Jiang Chen, her eyes immediately lit up as she greeted him with a cheerful smile. Hello, President. Welcome. What welcome? Jiang Chen casually said as he laughed and greeted her. Afterwards, he asked, puzzled, You're new here, right? How did you know that I'm the president? On the left of her chest was a name tag that read Sumingqi. President, don't you know that you're extremely popular right now? With both elbows on the table, Sumingqi smiled. Her voice had a unique tone that made others feel peaceful. Xia Shiyu indeed had an eye for choosing people. With a talent like this, after some training, she'd be great in the sales department. Popular? Jiang Chen looked lost for a moment. While he knew he was considered a public figure, he didn't think he was popular. When he came out of the airport a few days ago, he didn't see any cameras pointed at him. Haha, when is the last time President went online? Oh, I remember you have a Weibo account, unless that one is fake. Sumingqi asked curiously. I do have Weibo, but how did you know? Jiang Chen took out his phone and logged into his long-forgotten account. He recalled that the only person he followed was Lu Yao. After that, he didn't bother sending out a single Weibo. But when his eyes landed on the numbers, he jumped. Followers, 8.21 million. Following, 1. Hee, I am also your follower. Sumingqi shook her phone as coyly blinked her eyes. Everyone calls you national husband. Huh? Jiang Chen glanced over the rows of its symbols, dumbfounded. He randomly opened a few. It was either, I want to make babies with you, or, please notice me, I can warm the bed. Many passionate females added a selfie in the message, but most belonged to the type that had no Photoshop at all. Jiang Chen was secretly shocked at his popularity. But he would pass on the baby's part. It made sense, however. Future technology was now valued at over $5 billion USD by Wall Street analysts, and this was the number given to the press a month ago. After the introduction and success of their revenue model, as well as the era-defining game New Era, future technology's value could easily have doubled. Without exaggerating, Jiang Chen's net worth was easily over 10 billion USD. Moreover, he was quite good-looking, and someone revealed that he was only 23 years old. New to the business, young and rich, and also single. Immediately, all spotlights were focused on him. Even without sending out a single Weibo, social media officials acted on their own and verified the account, making the number of followers explode. He was very curious. How did the Weibo officials know about his Weibo account? What do you think? It's not bad to be popular, right? Su Mingqi smiled happily at Jiang Chen. Not bad. He scratched his nose while laughing shyly. His sudden public stature felt surreal. Hee, oh yeah. President, you still don't have a girlfriend, right? I'm also single. Do you think I can pursue you? Su Mingqi coyly said in a half-joking tone of voice. Just as Jiang Chen was about to reject her, a light cough transmitted from the end of the hall. Xia Xiyu was standing there. Her silky, black hair was pulled up, and her black suit was paired with a white dress shirt, black stockings, and a black pencil skirt. She demonstrated the office lady vibe to perfection. Still stunning. Su Mingqi playfully popped her tongue out and immediately put her phone away. It was evident that Xia Xiyu was well respected in the company. Don't use your phone at work. Remember this next time. After giving Su Mingqi a brief lecture, Xia Xiyu glanced at Jiang Chen. She paused before saying, haven't seen you in a long time. Her tone somehow seemed to carry a hidden bitterness. Jiang Chen said apologetically, I was about to go find you. Then follow me. Xia Xiyu nodded, then she turned around to lead the way to the office. After the two left, Su Mingqi patted her chest with relief. Her best friend walked over with a briefcase and gently tapped her. Chi-Chi, do you have a death wish? You dared to hit on the president in front of the CEO? What? Could they? Su Mingqi's eyes suddenly popped out as she realized the relationship between the two. Her best friendly Feng whispered mysteriously, let me tell you since you're new and don't know. The reason why the CEO still hasn't found a boyfriend yet is because of President Jiang. What do I do then? Will CEO Xia make trouble for me over this? Su Mingqi began to feel anxious. She didn't actually plan to pursue Jiang Chen, it was only a joke. If she got in her boss bad books, it would not be good. Future technology's salary and benefits were extremely competitive. Her best friend suddenly burst out laughing. You dare to laugh? Give me back my Haagen-Dazs. Su Mingqi said with mock anger. No, haha, don't worry, CEO Xia is not that type of person. She usually looks serious, but she's not the narrow-minded type to give you trouble. If Jiang Chen heard this word, he would have a shocked expression. Xia Xiyu did exactly that to fire him. So people do improve?